Hey everyone, welcome to another video from Risk, Rights, and Rounds. My name's Greg, and on this channel, we support the Second Amendment by three things. We spread the word about what's happening around the country, impacting our Second Amendment rights. We talk about tips and insights that companies in the firearms community can consider, and we enjoy spending time putting rounds downrange. Today's video, we're going to talk more about what's happening on the rights side of things. Anybody that's in the firearms community and has been paying attention to our battle to defend our Second Amendment rights knows that right now, before the Supreme Court, there are 5 cases, as some people will call it the Big Five, that we are waiting to find out if SCOTUS is going to take up or not. Those 5 cases are National Association for Gun Rights versus Lamont. That's an assault weapons ban case coming out of the state of Connecticut. There's Grant v. Higgins, which is another assault weapons ban case coming out of Connecticut. There's Viramontes versus Cook County, which is coming out of Illinois, and that's the appeal for the assault weapons ban that Cook County passed before the state of Illinois passed the Protect Illinois Communities Act. There's a case called Gators Custom Guns versus the state of Washington, so that's a magazine ban case coming out of Washington State. And there is Duncan v. Bonta, which has been going on for a number of years, which is a magazine ban case coming out of the state of California. Those are the Big Five. That's what everybody's been putting a lot of attention towards, and we're all waiting to see, is the Supreme Court finally going to take one of these cases? So while everyone's focused on that, I want to talk today about a few other cases that are also, I think, equally important to be paying attention to. Because while we all hope that SCOTUS is going to finally take up one of these cases, and a lot of these states like California, New York, Illinois, now Virginia, are going to be getting relief depending on the outcome of some of these cases, if for some reason they don't, there are other cases that are also in motion that could be a candidate for the Supreme Court to consider. The first case that I want to mention that's not in front of the Supreme Court right now is Barnett v. Raoul. This is the appeals case right now that's sitting in front of the Seventh Circuit, waiting for their opinion to come out. Oral arguments were heard on that back in September of 2025. So that's a challenge to Illinois' assault weapon ban and their large capacity magazine ban that was passed in January of 2023. The thing that's unique about this case, and depending on the outcome of what we hear from the Seventh Circuit, is this is a case that actually had a full 3-day bench trial, and there's a lot of documentation that goes with that case. I believe the count was somewhere in the range of over 270 pages of case document, which is something that a lot of cases historically that have gotten all the way up to the Supreme Court don't have behind it, that I think SCOTUS would find value in if they don't take one of the cases sitting in front of them right now. The second case is another one that is a combination of assault weapon bans and large capacity magazine bans coming out of the state of New Jersey. This one's called Cheeseman v. Plaen. The thing that makes this one interesting is, similar to Barnett v. Raoul, it made it from the trial court to the appeals court, and it was set for a 3-judge bench hearing for oral arguments. But before they could even hear it, an en banc panel decided to take this case and hear it en banc and just skip the oral arguments with 3 judges altogether. The Cheeseman v. Plaen case was heard for oral arguments in October of 2025. And one of the things that's interesting about this is there's a 15-judge panel that heard the case. And over the last few years, there's been a shift in the judges in the Third Circuit from being historically more liberal to now having some judges that have been appointed in more recent years that are more conservative. This is one of the cases that could go in favor of the plaintiffs, and if it does, it could actually give SCOTUS a circuit split. And if you look historically at how SCOTUS has decided what cases they're going to take up, when there's a circuit split, the odds are more in favor that they're going to accept a petition to hear that case or that subject matter. Cheeseman v. Plaen and Barnett v. Raoul are right now at the appeals level. But outside of that, there are numerous other cases that are going on and legislation that's going on that is impeding on our Second Amendment rights. If you look at the state of Rhode Island, last year they passed an assault weapons ban, but there was a grandfather clause. So anything that you had, you're allowed to keep. You just can't purchase anything additional, right? This year, there's legislation that's going to amend that law that went into effect last year that would ban not only the purchase or sale or transfer of so-called assault weapons, but would also ban the possession, which really leaves the civilians of the state of Rhode Island with no choice but to either defy the law or give up their firearms. So it is a classic example of how the Democratic Party is trying to go about civilian disarmament. In Rhode Island, that legislation that's sitting before their Congress right now is House Bill H8073. And they're not the only ones. Colorado has legislation right now that would regulate the sale of rifle barrels. So with Colorado, there's Senate Bill 26043. And that is an attempt to minimize the capability for people to produce ghost guns. But in reality, all it's doing is preventing people from being able to order parts and pieces for firearms that they already have and have them shipped to their house. Any transaction has to go through a federal firearms license holder, and it has to go through background checks and the same process you would if you were buying an actual firearm. And we all know that a barrel, a handguard, a buttstock, they are parts. There is nothing about them that should be regulated. If you've been in the firearms community for a while, or you follow what's going on with legislation across the country, you're probably familiar with the Bruen decision, which came down that said any regulation around firearms has to be based in historical text, history, and tradition of firearms regulation. And you cannot ban commonly owned firearms. But states like California, Illinois, New York, Virginia, Colorado, they don't care about the precedent that's been set by the Supreme Court already. So it's until the Supreme Court takes up one of these very blatant assault weapon bans or large capacity magazine bans and makes a ruling on that, these liberal run states are going to keep attacking the Second Amendment and trying to pass every bit of legislation that they can until SCOTUS acts. And the firearms community needs SCOTUS to act. We could spend the next several hours going through the list of all the legislation that's pending with states that are trying to attack the Second Amendment. I mean, I think based on what we've talked about so far today, you get the idea. But we need SCOTUS to take up one of these cases and put an end to this attack on law-abiding citizens, because at the end of the day, we know criminals don't care about what law gets passed. Criminals are going to do criminal things, whether the law allows it or not. The gun-grabbing left will tell you we're just trying to pass common sense safety measures. We're trying to keep people safe. It's about keeping communities safe. It has absolutely nothing to do with keeping communities safe. It has everything to do about control. And we need the Supreme Court to act, take up one of these cases, and provide relief to those of us that are living behind blue walls in states like Illinois, California, and the list goes on. So as it stands right now, the Big Five are still sitting before the Supreme Court. Yesterday was Friday, the 27th of March, and that was the date that conference was set where the Supreme Court justices are coming together to decide what they're going to take and what they aren't. Monday morning, we're going to find out what they've decided or if they're going to continue kicking the can down the road. Hopefully, they're going to take up one of these cases. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on it and keeping you updated with what's happening across the country when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. And until next time, keep making your voice heard, stand up for the Second Amendment, and stay vigilant.